What you're about to witness defies every rule of military aviation. A Ukrainian attack helicopter deliberately flew straight into enemy missile range, practically begging to be shot down. The Russians thought they had found the perfect target, but they were walking directly into one of the most ingenious tactical traps ever recorded in modern warfare. Picture this scene unfolding in the afternoon sky over eastern Ukraine. An Mi-24 Hind gunship, one of the most formidable attack helicopters ever built, approaches a quiet sector near Oleshky, where minimal military activity has occurred for months. This area has seen nothing more than occasional drone surveillance and sporadic artillery exchanges, making it an unlikely place for such a heavily armed aircraft to appear. The helicopter carries an intimidating payload of 80 S-8 unguided rockets distributed across 4 weapon pods. Each rocket weighs nearly 12 kilograms and packs enough explosive power to penetrate 400 millimeters of armor plating. This massive firepower represents a significant investment of military resources, especially for an area with seemingly little strategic value. Yet here comes this formidable war machine, flying low and slow through contested airspace in broad daylight. The approach violates every principle of helicopter survival tactics. Modern attack helicopters rely on terrain masking, high-speed approaches, and standoff weapons to avoid enemy air defenses. This pilot appears to be doing the exact opposite, practically advertising his presence to anyone watching below. Hidden in a damaged building approximately 3 kilometers away, a Russian MANPADS team has been tracking this unusual approach through their binoculars for several minutes. The 2-man crew operates a sophisticated 9K-38 Igla surface-to-air missile system, one of Russia's most capable portable air defense weapons. This system represents decades of Soviet engineering excellence, designed specifically to neutralize low-flying aircraft like the one now approaching their position. The Igla system weighs nearly 18 kilograms when fully loaded and carries a missile equipped with an advanced cooled infrared seeker. This cooling technology allows the weapon to distinguish between genuine aircraft exhaust signatures and basic countermeasures like simple flares. The system has proven devastatingly effective against helicopters throughout various conflicts, earning a fearsome reputation among pilots worldwide. As the Ukrainian helicopter enters the engagement zone, the Russian crew prepares to fire. The aircraft's behavior makes absolutely no tactical sense from a conventional warfare perspective. Why would experienced pilots expose themselves so brazenly over an area with known air defense coverage? The Oleshky region offers minimal strategic targets, no significant troop concentrations, and no critical infrastructure requiring immediate suppression. The helicopter's flight path suggests it may have actually crossed the Dnipro River into occupied territory, an extraordinarily risky maneuver that places the aircraft well within the Igla's operational range. This tactical choice should trigger immediate alarm bells for any experienced air defense crew, but the tempting target overrides their common sense. The Ukrainian pilot rolls into his attack dive and unleashes the entire rocket payload in a devastating ripple-fire sequence. 80 rockets streak toward the ground at incredible velocity, spreading across a 500-meter impact zone. However, something appears fundamentally wrong with this attack pattern. Many rockets splash harmlessly into the river, while others impact empty fields, sending up massive geysers of mud and debris. This seemingly wasteful attack pattern serves a crucial dual purpose that the Russian observers failed to recognize. Not only does it suppress a wide area, but more importantly, it creates the perfect conditions to force an air defense response. The widespread pattern and apparent lack of precision targeting makes the helicopter appear vulnerable and poorly coordinated, exactly the kind of easy target that MANPADS teams are trained to engage immediately. The Russian crew follows their training manual perfectly, adhering to Soviet-era doctrine that mandates immediate engagement of any aircraft within the Igla's operational range. The gunner verifies his weapon parameters one final time before acquiring the target. The system can engage aircraft traveling up to 800 meters per second at altitudes up to 3.5 kilometers, and the Ukrainian helicopter falls well within these engagement parameters. At exactly the moment when the last rockets impact below, the Russian operator squeezes the trigger. The Igla's infrared seeker locks onto the helicopter's engine exhaust signature, and the missile's solid-fuel rocket motor ignites with a brilliant white flash visible for kilometers around. The missile accelerates to nearly twice the speed of sound, streaking toward its target with the cooled infrared seeker maintaining lock despite the afternoon sunlight. The Ukrainian pilot's radar warning receiver immediately alerts him to the launch, though his reaction suggests he was anticipating this exact moment. The SPO-15 Beryoza system represents sophisticated Soviet-era electronic warfare technology, capable of detecting electromagnetic emissions across multiple frequency bands and recognizing over 600 different threat signatures. The system provides both visual and audio warnings, with specific tones indicating different threat categories. Banking hard to the left while simultaneously deploying countermeasures, the helicopter releases 12 infrared flares in rapid succession. These countermeasures burn at temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Celsius, creating intense infrared signatures designed to seduce incoming missiles away from the aircraft's actual heat source. The timing proves absolutely perfect. In this critical moment, the battlefield transforms into a thermal nightmare for the incoming missile's guidance system. 80 exploding rockets below create a wall of heat signatures across the impact zone, while 12 fresh flares bloom like artificial suns above the helicopter. Each rocket impact generates secondary heat blooms that persist for several seconds, igniting vegetation and combustible materials throughout the target area. The missile seeker, designed in the 1980s for single-target scenarios, suddenly faces dozens of competing heat sources distributed across a three-dimensional maze of thermal confusion. The guidance system lacks the computational sophistication to discriminate between these signatures effectively. It loses lock on the helicopter and selects the brightest available heat source, a cluster of burning rocket impacts well away from the aircraft. The missile streaks harmlessly past the Ukrainian helicopter, close enough for the crew to observe, but far enough to avoid any damage from the proximity fuse. This miss was always the expected outcome, but the real victory lies in what happens next. By firing their missile, the Russian MANPADS team has just revealed their exact position to Ukrainian intelligence systems. The launch signature creates a brilliant infrared plume visible to multiple sensors positioned throughout the area. Ukrainian signals intelligence networks immediately triangulate the launch position using the missile's heat signature, combined with electromagnetic emissions from the team's communications equipment. This represents a revolution in battlefield awareness compared to previous conflicts. Traditional military operations might require 15 to 30 minutes to identify and transmit firing positions, but Ukrainian forces have compressed this timeline through integrated sensors and streamlined communication protocols. Within 90 seconds, targeting data reaches the appropriate strike asset. The critical intelligence flows directly to an FPV drone operator positioned 8 kilometers away. This represents a fundamental evolution in helicopter tactics that completely reverses traditional military doctrine. Rather than avoiding air defense systems through terrain masking and standoff weapons, Ukrainian pilots now deliberately expose themselves to draw fire, trusting in countermeasures and accepting potential losses to achieve the greater goal of eliminating enemy air defense networks. This acceptance of calculated risk transforms the helicopter from potential victim to active hunter. Traditional military academies would never teach such tactics, but they're proving devastatingly effective against conventional air defense networks. The psychological impact extends far beyond the immediate tactical success. Meanwhile, The Russian team begins their standard post-engagement procedure, completely unaware that an 8-minute countdown to their elimination has already started. Soviet doctrine calls for immediate relocation after firing to avoid counter-battery response, a tactic that provided reasonable safety during the Cold War era when enemy response times measured in tens of minutes or hours. Modern surveillance technology and networked operations have compressed this timeline to single digits. The shoot-and-scoot tactic that once guaranteed survival now creates a predictable vulnerability window that Ukrainian forces have learned to exploit with devastating precision. The FPV drone operator receives final confirmation of target coordinates and powers up a modified commercial quadcopter. Its civilian origins hide a distinctly military purpose, with a 1.5-kilogram warhead attached where a camera gimbal would normally sit. This represents the perfect fusion of consumer technology and military innovation that has characterized so much of this conflict. The drone lifts off and sets course for the Russian position, flying at just 50 meters altitude to avoid radar detection and visual observation. The quadcopter's small size, plastic construction, and electric motors provide minimal signatures across multiple detection spectrums. Electric propulsion produces almost no thermal signature and generates a unique acoustic signature that's only audible within 1 to 200 meters. By the time you hear an electric drone approaching, it's already far too late to react effectively. This near-silent approach until the final seconds gives targets no time to take cover or implement defensive measures. The Russian MANPADS team continues their equipment breakdown procedure, focused entirely on properly stowing their complex weapon system rather than maintaining situational awareness. The Igla requires several critical steps to disassemble safely, including disconnecting the launch tube from the grip assembly, disposing of the expended battery coolant unit, and securing each component in its carrying case for transport. This breakdown process typically takes 4 to 6 minutes under ideal conditions, an eternity in modern warfare. The muddy terrain of the river delta transforms this routine procedure into a nightmare scenario. Summer rains have turned the ground into thick mud that clings to boots and equipment, while the damaged building that provided concealment and a stable firing platform now becomes a trap. The vulnerability window inherent in MANPADS employment represents a critical weakness that Ukrainian forces identified early in the conflict. During breakdown, crews cannot simultaneously disassemble complex weapon systems and maintain effective situational awareness. This 4 to 6 minute period of task fixation creates an opportunity that drone operators have been specifically trained to exploit. The distributed nature of Ukrainian operations enables this rapid response capability. Rather than following traditional military hierarchies where targeting data must flow through multiple command levels for approval, Ukrainian forces operate with remarkable autonomy. The drone operator receives coordinates directly from signals intelligence and can immediately engage without waiting for lengthy approval chains. This flat command structure compresses decision cycles from 30 minutes to under 2 minutes, providing the flexibility needed to exploit narrow vulnerability windows. The choice of this quiet sector for the operation was deliberate, ensuring maximum psychological impact among Russian air defense networks, monitoring radio frequencies throughout the region. 6 minutes after the failed missile engagement, the Ukrainian drone approaches the target area. Through the first-person view feed, the operator observes 2 Russian soldiers still struggling with their equipment at the firing position. The nearly 18-kilogram Igla system becomes nearly impossible to manage quickly in the muddy terrain that characterizes this region. The drone's approach profile maximizes success while minimizing detection probability. Flying below most radar systems' minimum detection thresholds, the small quadcopter presents minimal radar cross-section and virtually no thermal signature. More importantly, its electric motors remain nearly silent until the final moments of approach. 7 minutes after firing their missile, the Russians finally notice the incoming threat. The distinctive sound of drone rotors, burned into every soldier's memory after months of combat, triggers immediate recognition. However, in the confined space near the building, while carrying heavy equipment through difficult terrain, no effective escape route exists. The operator maintains target lock through the camera feed, making final corrections to ensure the warhead impacts precisely between the two soldiers and their equipment. 8 minutes after the Igla launch, the drone strikes with devastating effect. The explosion ensures one fewer Igla system threatening Ukrainian aircraft operations. Within hours, Russian communications traffic indicates widespread discussion among air defense units throughout the sector. MANPADS teams receive new instructions emphasizing restraint and requiring explicit authorization before engaging targets. This hesitation, born from fear of immediate retaliation, degrades the entire network's effectiveness. Ukrainian helicopters now operate with significantly greater freedom, knowing that Russian operators must weigh personal survival against operational duty. The psychological warfare aspect proves just as important as the tactical victory, creating lasting effects that extend far beyond this single engagement. This operation demonstrates how modern warfare continues evolving, where consumer technology, distributed command structures, and acceptance of calculated risk combine to create entirely new tactical possibilities that traditional military doctrine never anticipated.